now. We already on the draft, so we might as well just continue to touch on the draft, man. It's only natural. So as far as this year, what the Raiders have done, right? This was the first year in the first round where I know a lot of us looked at the player after he was picked, and then a lot of us didn't have no concerns after we did our research on that first round player. You know what I mean? But where were you as far as rounds 1 and 2? Because I mean, I saw what you said about Jackson Powers Johnson, and I definitely want to touch on the offensive line too. But where are you on Brock Bowers right now?
So I try not to give an opinion and then change my mind, and then the last thing I want to do is lie about something, right? Because the Raiders didn't take a guy, or they did take a guy, right? I did not like the Brock Bowers pick when it happened, and I still don't like the pick. But I don't like it because I think Brock Bowers is going to suck, right? That's not why I don't like the pick. I think Brock Bowers is arguably the best player out of this class, right? The reason why I don't love the pick is because I think the Raiders need a right tackle. Mm-hmm. And I think, I would make the argument that tight end doesn't matter all that much, right? To me, tight ends aren't game changers, right? They're really not, in my opinion, at least. And I understand Brock Bowers is more than just a tight end, right? I think a lot of people will say, well, he can be used in multiple different ways. He can be used in so many different, you can put him wherever you want on the field, right?
Right.
The thing is, we had spent a second round pick on Michael Mayer just the year before, all right? And it's not even just a second round. It was a borderline first round pick, right? Michael Mayer was, I think, the second pick, or maybe the third pick in the second round. Right. Like the 34th overall pick, whatever he was. And so to me, the fact that you already have a tight end, I think the Raiders should have went. And obviously, we weren't going to get a quarterback at that point, so that's understandable. Mm-hmm. I think it would have made sense for the Raiders to still take a right tackle, right? Or what you could have done is, the Rams had called the Raiders, right? There's this entire video. The Rams really wanted to trade up.
They wanted Bowers here.
Right. They offered the Raiders an additional second round pick. Think about this, man. The Raiders could have went back. I think it was like the 19th overall pick.
Right.
They could have given that to the Rams, and then they could have gotten that second round pick as well. Maybe they had a third round pick for next year or whatever it is. And you could have still gotten a guy in Tyler Guyton, who I think Tyler Guyton's going to end up becoming one of the top 10 best tackles in the NFL. Right. You give him 2 years. I think he's going to be such a great tackle. And outside of Tyler Guyton, we took Jackson Powers Johnson, which we would have probably taken him anyways. That shores up your offensive line right there. And then you'd still have another second round pick. And there were so many good football players that I think went in the second round. Right? There are good defensive tackles. There were good defensive ends. There are good.
That's true.
You could have doubled up and got another guard, right? You could have taken the guy the Cowboys took in the third round out of Kansas. You could have taken a wide receiver potentially. Right, if you really want to move up a little bit, there was a couple of receivers. I think the Chargers took a guy in the second round out of Georgia.
Yeah, they put McConkey.
So I don't know. Again, I don't hate the player. So I hope people can understand. I don't hate the player. Right. I just think that tight ends don't matter as much, and that's my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with that. The people in the watching this video, you guys don't have to agree with it. But I just don't think tight ends win Super Bowls, and I think tight ends are reliant on their quarterback and their scheme. All right, I think they're reliant. And, truth be told, we have Devontae Adams, we have Jacoby Myers, we have Trey Tucker, we have Michael Mayer. Those guys aren't going to have success if the quarterbacks suck, right? So none of those guys really matter and will not impact the Raiders to win a Super Bowl. But what will impact the Raiders to win a Super Bowl is going to be your offensive line, and it's going to be your defense line. Those two positions matter so much more than any other position in the NFL, right? Outside of your quarterback, of course. So, I don't know. And then some people even have been talking about Colton Miller. I don't think it's going to actually happen, but some people have been saying, hey, is there a potential that the Raiders trade Colton Miller away?
I've been hearing a lot of that.
It's not because he's a bad football player, right? But look, he has an injury history and
longer too.
He's as good as he will get, and he's a really, really, really good football player, but he's not like a top 3 left tackle in the NFL. Right?
I agree with that.
Stools, tier 1. Tristan Wirfs, tier 1. Christian Darisaul's probably tier 1 as well. There's probably like 5 on our team, but yeah.
There, Right. So I mean, now you talk about Bowers. I hear you with that. At first, I didn't understand it either, right? I was a Fuaga guy. That's who I kind of wanted him at 13 right there, because I wasn't thinking about Bowers at all. It's not that he's a bad player. It's just like we don't need him.
No one was thinking about him.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, now if he goes to a team like the Chargers or whatever, now I'm kind of mad. But at the end of the day, it's like, we get him. I see the skill set. I kind of understand what they're going to try to do. They're not going to use him as a traditional tight end. He's going to play all over the place. So we'll see, right? I mean, for him, it's all dependent on when we get in the season, how he's being used, like you said. So, I mean, is he like a game-changing wide receiver that you draft right there where you just put him anywhere and blah, blah, blah? We don't know that yet. I mean, I think we still got to see how the scheme fits him. Now, the second round pick, Jackson Powers-Johnson, I'm very excited about that one. I love that pick right there. I think we're going to be good with him there. But then we start going to the tackle out of Maryland. That's really where I want to ask you, because at the end of the day, I think we all are kind of, on the same kind of mindset where we like Jackson Powers-Johnson. We think he can be really good. In my opinion, I think he can be really good. I don't know what your ceiling is. What is your ceiling for him?
For Powers-Johnson?
Yeah.
I think he has Quentin Nelson, Kevin Jenkins, Tyler Smith. He has like that bully mindset.
Right.
And I think he's going to become one of the top 3 or 4 guys at his position in the NFL. Now, it's hard to say, like I could ask you who's the best guard in the NFL. There's like 7 guys that would be ranked as number 1. Right? It's very hard to separate those guys to say this guy's truly better. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson is going to be right there in that same mold. Right? I think Powers-Johnson is going to end up becoming one of the best guards in the NFL. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't love the fact that we took a guard in the second round. If he was a center, and he's our long-term center, it's my favorite pick of the draft. But since he's a guard, and I think the projection now is he's going to be a guard long-term, right? I think that's kind of what the Raiders have been saying.
The way it looks, because now you got Andre, and he looks like he's going to be here long-term, so that's the way it's looking.
Right. And so, to me, Creed Humphrey, when he came out of I think he came out of Iowa, or may have been one of those. Creed Humphrey, the starting center of the Kansas City Chiefs. Right. He was a second-round pick. He was considered the best center in that class. And when you watched his tape, his college tape, you knew this guy's going to be a great center in the NFL. And now that Jason Kelsey's retired, Creed Humphrey is widely considered the best center in the NFL. Right. So you look at the Chiefs, they got the best center in the NFL, and it helps that offensive line, right? Because you have a center that can communicate. He's a great football player in himself. Guards don't matter as much, right? Centers matter and your tackles matter. Guards don't matter as much. And if I asked you who's the starting guard of the Cleveland Browns or the Miami Dolphins or the Carolina Panthers, and not you specifically, but if I asked, most of the people watching right now, if I asked a random football, they're not going to know. You mostly only know the starting guards of your own team. And the reason why you don't know is because guards don't really matter, right? They essentially don't matter, right? And so if Powers-Johnson is going to be our left guard for the next 10 years, I don't love the pick as much. Okay. Not saying that I don't think he's going to be a great football player. I think he's going to become one of the best guards. I just don't think guards matter all that much. And if he becomes a top 2 or 3 guard, are you really going to allocate $20 million to a guard?
That's true.
So that's just something to kind of think about, right? We're going to have to pay this guy down the line at some point. And it's the same thing you got to keep in mind with Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers. You're going to have to pay these guys. And they're going to be top 7 guys in terms of the contract at their position. Now, we won't have Devontae Adams in 5 years, so it's all right at that point, right? You'll still have 2 really, really good tight ends. It's just interesting the way Tom Telesco drafted, because I do think the 2 guys are great picks. Right. And if he does what he did this last draft, where your first and second round picks are, Pro Bowl caliber players, if he does that for the next 5 years, our team's going to be good. There's just no way it won't be good. Like, the roster will be legit. It'll always come down to coaching if we win Super Bowls or not. But I like what he did with those 2 guys. Now, Glaze, I think, is the guy you're going to ask about next.
That is where we're going to go next, because this is where we're going to have the bulk of the conversation with the offensive line, because I know that's kind of your specialty, right? So we're going to have the bulk of the conversation. But when you talk about Jackson Powers, just want to touch on that kind of does fall. Now, when you put it the way you put it, it kind of falls into the theory on what I was saying, where I was like, I don't like drafting a left tackle and making him a right tackle, or vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like doing that. So it kind of plays into that the way you described it just now. Now, I mean, it all depends on like what's your feelings on Andre James at this thing right now. I mean, they gave him that extension.
Right.
Me, I was not a fan. Right. I always said, and funny enough, me and my guys talked about it. We were always saying like, let James go and try to draft Powers Johnson to be the center. Like that's what we were trying to, or let Dylan Parham maybe get something over there or something like that since he's done that before. But what's your thoughts on Andre James first and foremost, and then let's touch on the right tackle position because that's really where we have our question marks too.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is so I do agree with you on Andre James, right? I think the Raiders should have moved on from Andre James. Essentially, the contract we gave him is a 2-year contract, right? It is technically 3 years, but we can get out of it after 2 years.
Okay.
It's crazy to me because I look at teams around the NFL and I look at how they draft and like the value they get out of certain guys, and sometimes you can predict guys that are going to be good football players, right? Especially on the offensive line, to me at least, right? I feel like you can predict it pretty quickly, right? If you guys watch, for example, Creed Humphrey's tape when he came out, this guy's a monster, right? He was so damn legit coming out. There's a guy who was a center that went in the 5th round to the Buffalo Bills. His name's Cedric Van Pran. He was the guy coming out of Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
5th round pick. He's gonna start for the Bills. It might be this year. It might not be because he is a rookie. I think center, it takes about a year for you to develop and really understand the cause. But by next year, Cedric Van Pran will be 23 years old. He'll be a starting center for the Bills, and I think he'll be a top 10 center. I think you can watch his tape and realize this guy's legit, right? So sometimes I look at these teams and I say, why would the Raiders just not do what that team's doing, right? Where you're getting all this value, especially on the interior offensive line, right? And then another thing is just like, so we didn't take a tackle, right? We waited until the 3rd round to take Delmar Glaze.
Right.
And the crazy thing with Delmar Glaze is, he was never really that good at Maryland. Like his tape was never that good.
That's what I'm saying.
And, he had a good Senior Bowl, and I think Tom Telesco appreciates the Senior Bowl a lot more than other people might, and I agree with Telesco 100% on that. Even the Senior Bowl is, if like Darnell Wright, for example, went to the Senior Bowl and he kicked people's ass at the Senior Bowl. Right. And then with that, he ended up being like the 9th or 10th overall pick last year in the 1st round. You can watch guys at the Senior Bowl, and you'll see the competition they're going up against. So I do understand if Delmar Glaze had a great Senior Bowl. I didn't have the tape this year to the Senior Bowl. At least I don't have it anymore. I had it early on in the process, but they kind of blocked it out, so you can't log in and go back and watch the tape. But there's a couple of interesting things with Delmar Glaze. One, his tape wasn't that good, right? And you can kind of look at guys and you can kind of predict guys. And I think with Glaze, I'm just not sure if he's ever going to be a good tackle. And I think he's like 6'4", right? I believe he's 6'4".
Right, yeah, he's not that big. He's not that big.
Right. But so another interesting thing with that is, if you guys think about this, a lot of people, I'm not a believer up there in Munford. I've been very open about that. I don't think he's going to translate into a good tackle. I might be wrong on that, but we'll see. Something tells me it's not going to work out.
Okay.
So the interesting thing is if the Raiders were sold on Thayer Munford, right? Let's say they are 100% sold. This is the guy that's going to be our long-term right tackle, or this guy's going to be the long-term right tackle. If that was the case, why did they spend a 3rd round pick on Delmar Glaze? All right, why did they take an offensive tackle in the 3rd round? And the crazy thing is Cooper Beebe's a much better guard than Delmar Glaze will ever be, right? So if you think that, hey, Delmar Glaze, well, we drafted him because he might play tackle, but really he's going to be a guard long-term and he'll be a good. Why wouldn't you just take the guy that's already a guard? That's
true. Yeah, that don't make sense.
Right. So I don't know. I just feel like I don't like the Delmar Glaze pick. I felt like it was a reach. If you want an offensive tackle, you take one in the 1st round, right? 2nd round, there's a lot of talent in the 2nd round. Sometimes you can get lucky in the 3rd round. The Chiefs got lucky with Wanya Morris last year in the 3rd round. He'll be their starting left tackle this season. Sometimes you'll get luckier in the later rounds, but mostly if you want a starting caliber tackle, you can look at every starting tackle this year in the NFL. I think it's like 78% of them are 1st round picks. And then I think like 18 or 19% are like 2nd round picks. You got 1% of 3rd round picks. but they're mostly guys that were drafted high. If you wanted a starting tackle, why take one in the third round? Just take one in the first round.
Right.
And then, so to me, I question that a little bit, right? I feel like they could have been. I would have taken a running back in the third round. Right? The Raiders could have gotten an absolute stud.
See, now this is where I was kind of different on that too, because I wasn't a fan of that Delmar Glaze pick at all. I didn't like it. I thought there were multiple other players we probably could have got at that time.
Right.
But kind of where we differ is I kind of like Thayer Munford. Me personally, I think he can't work out. I've seen a level of nastiness from him that I like. You know what I mean? Now, last year in his stint when he was kind of filling in for Colton Miller, I did like that little stint as well. Look good. But now I want to see if he can put it all together and be consistent. That is a question mark too. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to be the end all be all because I don't know yet. But from what I've seen, I am positive on that feeling right there.